I feel incredibly humbled and honored to be with you all today. Um, I'm doing a new research study. I'm going to share a little bit of that with you. And while I'm doing that, I guess it would be helpful for you to know that I was a math teacher. I chose math because it was a gatekeeper, keeping a lot of students, especially Black and Brown students, out of college if they weren't counseled to take the right courses. Then I was an administrator. So I've seen both sides. I was a teacher and an administrator. And now I actually teach at a couple of universities, but in a credentialing program. So helping to train new teachers. And with the lab, that's what we do. We support people who are basically doing teacher residency programs, right? But the flip side, compassion fatigue is my passion. I was thinking that maybe there are issues that are affecting teachers that are driving them away from the profession that we are not addressing with policy or support. And that is how I ended up studying this. It's a very personal story in that respect, but I can, as we go along, I may share more about that. But today we're going to be talking about coaching with compassion. And I'll give you a little bit of background and then some tips. Hopefully it'll be helpful. One thing I'd like to ask you all to do as we are engaging today is to pay attention to what's moving in you, emotionally, mentally, physically, maybe spiritually. What are you thinking about? What's coming up for you? Engage with me in the chat and then there will be a chance for you to share what it is you might be thinking. But pay attention to that, because with compassion fatigue in this research, I find that some of the findings can be disturbing for people and it causes a lot of, something. So I just want you to be mindful and make sure you take care of yourself. This particular quote right here is from Christina Feldman. It's a book. It's actually, I don't know if you can see it. Maybe you can't see it. That's too far away. There we go. It's called Compassion by Christina Feldman. And in here, she talks about what compassion is, right? And it's this force of empathy within our own hearts. And it allows us to reach out and touch the heart of others, like ourselves, and to help ease suffering if we can, because ultimately everybody wants to be safe and happy, right? The thing about compassion and this notion that are what we're talking about is that sometimes though, that caring, that reaching out, that touching the hearts of others and empathizing can be really exhausting. Yeah, like if you are interacting with someone who is constantly going through a lot of things, and because we are beautiful people and we're empathetic people, we tend to empathize and we almost put ourselves in their shoes and we can feel it. And then over time, what tends to happen is that their trauma becomes our trauma. The things that they might be going through, that anxiety we start to experience, we might go home and not be able to stop thinking about it, right? We might start to withdraw and pull away from other people because we just don't want to deal with their stuff anymore. We might even become crabby, lash out. Anybody here lashing out? Not intentionally, not wanting to, but it's just happening. Yeah, that's compassion fatigue. The good news is that there's something to do. There's some things that we can do to work on it. So I've been engaging in this study to take a look at how the COVID-19 pandemic has been impacting educators' experiences with compassion fatigue. And you are the first group to see my preliminary findings. That's why I'm a little bit nervous, because I haven't shared this with anyone yet. So small sample size, about 67 people, but here's the demographic breakdown. I'm talking to both administrators and teachers. And I've broken it down by race. You can see the different percentages. I would say it sort of mirrors what's going on in the state of California, the sample population here. And you can see on the right, gender identity, majority female, which also mirrors, and how many people are at middle schools, elementary schools, and high schools. And then you can see some of the school site demographics. Now, when I did this in 2019, I had one of the major findings, which was statistically significant, meaning when it compared high poverty schools to low poverty schools, I found out that those teachers were experiencing less compassion satisfaction, which means that pleasure that you derive from the work, they weren't as happy. It wasn't feeding their soul as much. Higher burnout and higher secondary traumatic stress than teachers working at low poverty schools. There are some other significant relationships there as well. For example, if the teacher was working at a school site that had a large population of African-American students or Latinx students or English learners, you would see higher secondary traumatic stress at that school site, which makes sense, right? Because when you're talking about secondary trauma, you're working with people who are experiencing trauma. And we know, like, especially during the pandemic, right, that Black and Brown people have been experiencing some disparate impacts due to COVID-19, right? So what this was saying was that depending upon where you worked, you might have more kids experiencing trauma, and therefore it was affecting you a little bit differently. But now, this is what I'm seeing. There are no statistically significant differences this time. Everybody is experiencing burnout. Everyone is experiencing secondary traumatic stress. Now, the difference, though, and I thought this was interesting, is that there's a lot of high compassion satisfaction, which is different. That wasn't the case before. When I think of compassion satisfaction, I'm talking about doing work that feeds your soul. Like you feel like being in education, you can make a difference, right? And I think what's happening is that a lot of people are making a difference, feeling like they're making a difference. It's just taking a huge toll. Does that resonate with anyone? Yeah, okay. So one of the things that was I found in 2019 was that secondary traumatic stress or secondary trauma from students wasn't the only trauma that teachers were experiencing. Sometimes it came at the hand of parents, and sometimes it came at the hand of administrators, right? Like, and maybe not intentionally, but yeah, it could be traumatic, right? There was a lot of guilt because there were some teachers who just felt like maybe they could just give their attention to kids who are easier to deal with and to heck with all the others, even though we know that the kids who are usually experiencing a lot of trouble or a lot of trauma, God bless them, can be difficult to work with. Never absent, right? They always want to be there. And being present, you know, maybe you're the safe refuge, but they don't have the skills that they need to manage that, and it can be difficult. And so there's a lot of guilt there. And then, of course, working conditions, school climate, it matters. You know, checking in with each other, having an administrator that says, how are you? Having resources, feeling supported. Here's what I'm seeing now. Again, secondary trauma from students isn't the only thing that's happening, but this time it's life experiences, right? Some people are having some trouble with COVID, getting sick themselves. Some people have lost family members, but the district administration, there's been a lot of like mandates and things that people at the site have to implement. And it's been really difficult because they have to deal with the pushback, especially administrators. So any of you have been experiencing any flip-flopping when it comes to guidelines around, let's say, masks, for example. Every time there's a change in policy, the administrators have to roll that out, right? And if parents are upset about it, they hear about it. If teachers are upset about it, they hear about it. If students are upset about it, they hear about it. And so they feel like they're punching bags. But what's happening with the teachers, that same thing happens with them, but there's something else that the teachers were telling me that they noticed. Students have forgot how to be students. It's like, wait a second, like, what does it mean to be a part of a classroom environment? How do we engage with one another? How do we manage our emotions? those SEL strategies, when they were away from them, it seems like they forgot a little bit. And so kids are a lot more quick to anger, flying off the handle. Just like I was describing around that irritability, when you're experiencing trauma or compassion fatigue, you might snap. Kids are doing it. And so it's impacting the teachers. I have, in the interviews so far, people have shared that they've just stopped assigning homework. Forget it, they're not doing it. I'm not going to deal with it. And then another teacher just basically said that I just don't have the energy to deal with it. I'm just going to focus on the kids who are doing the work. And that, I don't know about you, that feels that's causing something to happen in my gut. It just feels like a little like, ugh. Resources are lacking. Even with all this one-time COVID money, there's still not enough support for trauma. There's still not enough support for, like emotional support, but not for the staff either. When people have passed away from COVID, for example, counselors are needed, or counselors, therapists, people come in and help. But because of the staffing shortage, the teachers can't leave the classroom to take advantage of that. So what's happening to their mental health and well-being? And then self-care strategies. Some people are trying, but mostly it's just non-existent. Although there was one, it's called procrastinating. That's what I heard. It was procrastinating. They're just doing a lot of baking, just trying to just keep their mind off of everything. Gave it a good old 10 pounds, but that was something. And I'm telling you all this because I want you to see that, I want you to know why you all are so important. Okay, what people are dealing with, it's not a small thing, right? There's a lot going on and people need help and they need support and they need people who are going to be there for them. These are some of the things that people were asking for, but I want to hone in on this one: show authentic care. Just by a show of hands, when's the last time someone from your school site asked, how are you doing today? Can I just see, like, raise your hand? Okay. That wasn't everybody. How about this? When's the last time someone told you thank you for the work you're doing as an educator? Look at that. What you are entrusted to do, what you are doing is you are holding very sacred space for these educators who need support. Maybe they need coaching with instruction. Like, there's one thing I did see, there's flexibility. There was flexibility with grading maybe, but not, and people had to learn how to reteach during the pandemic. But I'm thinking that if kids are this apathetic now, and it's really hard to get them to engage in the work, what kind of strategies are we using that might help make the learning that much more exciting so the kids will want to participate and not do that? What kind of coaching might that bring? Right? And so what I'm asking you all to remember is that some of you are going to be working with teachers who have kids who are losing people. I'm talking about moms, dads, siblings, right? You might have teachers who have just been yelled at because I don't know, maybe a student was just having a really bad day and they took it out on this teacher. Or maybe there was a parent who just learned that their kid is failing and they're upset about it. What I'm asking you to do is to remember that you are there to be supportive and to ease their suffering. That's the difference for me between compassion and empathy. Empathy is putting yourself in someone else's shoes and feeling what they're feeling. Compassion is taking it one step further. And if you can act and do something to help, then you take that action. The person may or may not accept it, but at least you've tried. And so what I'm asking you all to think about is to be that compassionate coach. So in the chat, you should be seeing a link momentarily for some tips on how to coach with compassion. And I put these tips together based on some reading, the book Compassion by Christina Feldman. Love it. If you like to meditate, if you like mindfulness activities, this is a good one to get because it shows you how to have compassion for yourself, right? Because just because you're helping someone else with their stuff doesn't mean that you aren't important, because you are. We need to take care of you too. And then the other one is TAL mentoring, cultivating collaborative relationships in all areas of your life. So let's just take a moment to think about what these tips are. Relationship is key. That's the most important thing. And when you enter into this relationship with your coachees, that's a sacred act, right? And you're crafting with them, and you're going to learn from them, and they're going to learn from you. And that relationship is reciprocal. Okay. And you can't expect for them to give everything or you to give everything and then not get nothing in return. That's not what's the case here. And they can expect the same from you. You're going to give as good as you get. Remember, your wisdom, everything that you've been through, every life experience, everything that you have in the classroom is a gift. And when we give that to others, we should just do that from a stance of appreciation and gratitude. I am so excited to be here with you. It matters that you let me into your space to share this with you. And it's my way of saying thank you, right? It's the same thing that you're doing, right? You can learn as much about yourself and the work from connecting with someone new. Be open. Maybe they're doing something you hadn't thought about, right? We're not here to just sit and give our wisdom and say, well, you need to do it like this, this, and this. We need to listen. Listen to what it is that they're saying. Listen to what it is that they're sharing, and to act in ways that will help them to be the best them that they can be. We're not going to be in a classroom with them, right? So they've got to be able to do it. What is it that you have? Obviously, Karen and Glennon know it. There's something there that you can share and support them with. And lastly, I'm just going to go to the last part where it says, this is a contract where. In this space, we agree to give as good as we get, to be vulnerable, to listen with our hearts and minds, to share, to guide one another, to be open, compassionate, caring, and to support each other's personal growth and dreams, side by side. And if you ever get to a space where you're like, what am I supposed to be doing again? You can look at this and just remember that in this relationship that you're getting ready, or you're talking about in this coaching that you're entering, that the people you work with have just as much learning for you as you have for them. But more than that, they need you. They need you. They need you. So I'm curious. I did want to know what was moving in you, because I think I don't have much time left. So in the chat in a moment, you're gonna actually, yeah, I'll put it in the chat. I think there it is. Thank you. In the chat, there's a link that I want you to click on. And what I want you to think about and just reflect on what you've heard. I'm curious what's moving in you. What are you thinking about? So go ahead and go to that link and enter the code that you see on the screen. And you should be able to type. Look at that. I'm exhausted and drained, but now I am feeling less alone. The power of being side by side. Yeah, recognizing the trauma that we're all going through. Let's see if there's more. Yes, you are humans first. I guess my my final, and you can continue to answer. I guess my final piece of advice as you move forward in your coaching with compassion is to remember that you matter too. Remember when I said that self-care was virtually non-existent, right? Teachers are going to be sharing things with you that they're going through, and it's a lot. So what are you going to do to make sure your gas tank is full of fuel? What are you going to do to make sure that your well is full? What are you going to do for self-care? So here are, let's see if I can show you. Here's one of the cute little thing, and you can have access to these slides. Feel free to use them. Here we go. What are you going to do for self-care throughout this process? And why don't we just start with tonight? Doesn't have to be big. I'm going to tell you what mine is. Okay? Don't like hate me. I have fallen in love with the Big Bang Theory. It's silly. It's funny. It doesn't make any darn sense, but when I put that on for 30 minutes, I can escape. You know what else I do? Reading. All right, I'll be honest. Audiobook reading, like I'm listening to it because I don't want to look at anything right now, but I've been doing that. What about you? Let's put that in the chat. What are you going to do for self-care tonight? Doesn't have to be 30 minutes, could be 1 minute, 2 minutes, just one thing. And take a look at what others are putting in the chat and learn from each other. That's not weird. How to Get Away with Murder on Netflix is a good show. Only time I would say it's weird is if you're staying up till 3 in the morning watching it. I do that sometimes. Oh, happy birthday. There you go. See, just remember you. You all are important. And if I firmly believe that educators are first responders and you should be revered as such. And although people have seemed to forgotten what it was like for them in the pandemic when they had to educate their own children, you know, although people have forgotten that, I haven't. And so just in case no one has said it to you in a long time, thank you for your service. And thank you for this opportunity to share today. I appreciate you.
Well,